The Family Feud studio radiated its familiar energy on a sultry July afternoon in 2024, the audience settling into their seats with anticipation for another episode of the game show that had entertained generations of American families. Steve Harvey stood at center stage, his presence commanding yet approachable as he prepared to guide two families through the competition. The Coleman family from Tampa faced the Morgan family from Indianapolis, both teams displaying the excitement and nervous energy that accompanied appearing on national television. Among the contestants stood Nicole Coleman, a woman in her mid-30s whose strained smile and careful positioning away from certain family members suggested tensions that ran deeper than typical game show jitters. What should have been a light-hearted family competition was about to become a devastating moment of revelation when a careless answer exposed a betrayal that had been hidden for years, forcing Steve Harvey to make an immediate decision to protect innocent people from further harm and demonstrating that some secrets were too destructive to be revealed on a public platform. Before we continue with what happened next, if you value stories about protecting family members from public humiliation and the importance of handling sensitive situations with wisdom and compassion, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We share the most powerful moments from Family Feud that remind us about dignity, discretion, and the responsibility we have to protect those we love from unnecessary harm. Nicole Coleman had been living with a terrible secret for the past 18 months, a knowledge that had fundamentally altered her understanding of her family and that had placed her in an impossible position of choosing between loyalty to different family members. Nicole was married to her husband Michael for 7 years, a relationship that she had believed was solid and built on mutual love and commitment. They had 2 young children together, a 5-year-old daughter named Emma and a 3-year-old son named Jacob, both of whom were the center of their world, and the reason Nicole had chosen to remain silent about what she knew despite the emotional toll that silence had taken on her. Nicole's family structure was complicated by close relationships that had always characterized the Coleman clan. Nicole's younger sister Rachel had moved to Tampa 3 years earlier to be closer to Nicole and Michael, having recently gone through a difficult divorce. Rachel had been struggling emotionally and financially, and Nicole had welcomed her sister with open arms, offering support and encouragement as Rachel worked to rebuild her life. Michael had been equally welcoming, treating Rachel like the sister he had never had, and going out of his way to help her settle into the area. The 3 of them had spent significant time together, often having dinners or weekend activities that included Rachel along with Nicole and Michael's children. Nicole had been grateful for the closeness, believing that her sister and her husband got along well and that Rachel had found a supportive family environment during a difficult transition in her life. 18 months earlier, Nicole had made a discovery that shattered her sense of family and marriage. She had come home early from a work trip, arriving several hours before she was expected. When she entered her house, she had heard sounds coming from the upstairs bedroom, sounds that immediately made her stomach drop with dread and recognition. She had walked quietly up the stairs, her heart pounding, hoping desperately that what she suspected was not actually happening. When she reached the bedroom and opened the door, she found her husband Michael and her sister Rachel in bed together, engaged in intimate activity that left no doubt about what was happening. The confrontation that followed had been devastating. Michael and Rachel had been horrified at being caught, scrambling to cover themselves and attempting to explain what Nicole had witnessed with her own eyes. Through tears and recriminations, the truth had emerged. Michael and Rachel had been having an affair for approximately 6 months at that point, meeting secretly whenever they could arrange time away from Nicole's awareness. They claimed it had started innocently as friendship and emotional support, but had gradually evolved into something physical. They both expressed remorse and shame at betraying Nicole, but they also admitted that they had developed genuine feelings for each other that complicated their guilt and their attempts to end the relationship. Nicole had been faced with impossible choices in the aftermath of that discovery. She could expose the affair to the entire family, which would result in her parents and other relatives learning that both her husband and her sister had betrayed her in the most intimate way possible. She could demand that Michael leave and file for divorce immediately, which would upend her children's lives and create enormous practical challenges given their shared finances and home. She could insist that Rachel move away and cut off all contact, which would require explaining to family members why the previously close sisters were suddenly estranged. Each option carried significant costs and consequences that Nicole was not prepared to handle in her state of emotional devastation. In the immediate days after the discovery, Nicole had demanded that Michael and Rachel end the affair immediately and that Rachel find her own apartment and move out of the close proximity she had maintained to Nicole's family. Both had agreed, expressing remorse and promising that the affair was over. Rachel had found an apartment across town and had moved within 2 weeks. Michael had been apologetic and had committed to marriage counseling and to doing whatever was necessary to repair the trust he had destroyed. For reasons that Nicole herself did not fully understand, she had made the decision not to tell her parents or other family members about the affair. She had told herself that she was protecting her children from the knowledge of their father's betrayal and protecting her parents from the pain of knowing that both their daughter's husband and their younger daughter had engaged in such destructive behavior. She had convinced herself that keeping the secret was the mature and responsible choice, that it allowed everyone to move forward without the additional damage that full disclosure would cause. The reality was more complex and more painful. Nicole had kept the secret because she was ashamed of what had happened, because she feared the judgment and pity that would come from others knowing about the betrayal, because she wanted to maintain the appearance of having a stable marriage and family, and because she hoped that somehow silence would make it easier to move past what had occurred. The 18 months since the discovery had been extraordinarily difficult for Nicole. She had attended marriage counseling with Michael, working through issues of trust, betrayal, and the factors that had contributed to his choice to have an affair with her sister. The counseling had been painful and had required Nicole to confront not only Michael's betrayal, but also her own role in the marriage dynamics that may have created vulnerabilities. Michael had been remorseful and had made efforts to rebuild trust, being transparent about his whereabouts and communications and demonstrating through consistent behavior that he was committed to their marriage. Nicole's relationship with her sister Rachel had been more complicated. Rachel had sent numerous messages apologizing for the affair and for the betrayal of Nicole's trust. She had claimed that she never intended to hurt Nicole and that she had been in a vulnerable emotional state after her divorce that had led to poor judgment and inappropriate behavior. She had asked for forgiveness and for the opportunity to rebuild their sisterly relationship over time. Nicole had responded minimally to these overtures, not ready to forgive or to resume closeness with someone who had betrayed her so profoundly. However, because the affair remained a secret from the rest of the family, Nicole was forced to interact with Rachel at family gatherings and to maintain a veneer of normalcy that was exhausting and emotionally damaging. At holiday dinners and birthday celebrations, Nicole had to sit at the same table as Rachel and Michael, pretending that everything was fine when inside she was screaming with anger and hurt. She had to watch her parents treat Rachel with affection and concern, unaware that their younger daughter had engaged in an affair with their older daughter's husband. She had to manage her own children's interactions with their Aunt Rachel, allowing a relationship to continue while privately resenting every moment of contact. The psychological toll of maintaining this secret had been significant. Nicole had experienced symptoms of anxiety and depression, had struggled with insomnia and intrusive thoughts about the betrayal, and had felt increasingly isolated because she could not share the truth with friends or extended family members who might have provided support. Her therapist had encouraged her multiple times to consider telling her parents and releasing herself from the burden of keeping such a destructive secret, but Nicole had resisted, clinging to the belief that silence was protection rather than recognizing it as a form of self-harm. The Family Feud appearance had been arranged several months earlier, before the full weight of keeping the secret had become clear to Nicole. The Coleman family had been selected to participate, and the family team included Nicole, Michael, Nicole's parents, and Rachel. When the selection had been announced, Nicole had felt immediate dread at the prospect of spending hours with both Michael and Rachel in a high-pressure situation while maintaining the facade that nothing was wrong. She had considered refusing to participate, but doing so would have required explanations she was not prepared to give. She had hoped that perhaps the structured environment of the game show would make it easier to get through the experience without incident. In the days leading up to the taping, Nicole had felt increasing anxiety about the situation. She had noticed Michael and Rachel carefully avoiding direct interaction with each other in front of her, their obvious discomfort suggesting that they were aware of the awkwardness of the situation. Nicole's parents had been excited and enthusiastic about the family appearance, completely unaware of the tensions and the terrible secret that 3 members of their family were keeping from them. On the morning of the taping, Nicole had felt physically ill with stress, but she had forced herself to go through with the plan, telling herself that she just needed to get through a few hours and then it would be over. The game had proceeded through the initial rounds with the Coleman family performing adequately despite the underlying tension that Nicole felt acutely, even if others did not notice it. Michael and Rachel had been careful not to interact directly, and Nicole had positioned herself to maintain physical distance from both of them. Her parents had been engaged and enthusiastic, enjoying the experience without any awareness of the emotional minefield they were navigating. Then came the question that would destroy Nicole's carefully maintained secret and force everything into the open in the worst possible way. Steve Harvey read from his card with his characteristic enthusiasm and warmth. Name something that might make family gatherings awkward. It was a question designed to elicit humorous answers about political disagreements, embarrassing relatives, or minor family dramas. The Coleman family had control of the board, and it was Rachel's turn to provide an answer. She stepped up to the podium, visibly nervous in a way that suggested her anxiety was about more than just the game show pressure. Steve repeated the question for her benefit. Name something that might make family gatherings awkward. Rachel hesitated, her mind clearly elsewhere, and then she made a catastrophic mistake. Without thinking through the implications or considering who was listening, she gave an answer that was far too specific and far too revealing. Finding out that your sister's husband has been sleeping with you and nobody else in the family knows about it. The words hung in the air for a moment as everyone processed what Rachel had just said. This was not a generic answer about awkward family situations. This was a confession, delivered on national television, that exposed the affair and the conspiracy of silence in the most public and devastating way possible. Nicole felt as though she had been punched in the stomach, all the air leaving her lungs, as she realized what Rachel had just done. Her carefully maintained secret, the betrayal she had been protecting her parents from knowing about, had just been revealed to her family and to millions of viewers in the most humiliating way imaginable. Her parents stood frozen, their faces showing confusion as they tried to understand what Rachel had just said and whether it meant what it seemed to mean. Michael had gone pale, his expression showing horror at the public exposure of what he and Rachel had done. Steve Harvey's face registered shock and immediate understanding that something very wrong had just occurred. He recognized instantly that this was not a hypothetical answer but rather a confession of actual events, and that the woman who had given the answer had just destroyed her family's privacy and caused enormous harm to multiple people on his stage. Steve held up both hands and spoke firmly and clearly to stop what was happening. "Stop. We need to stop right now." He turned to the production crew and made decisive gestures. "Cut the cameras. Stop the taping immediately. This needs to end right now." Nicole's mother had found her voice, speaking with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. "Rachel, what did you just say? What are you talking about?" Rachel's face showed that she had finally realized the magnitude of her mistake, the recognition that in a moment of nervousness and poor judgment she had revealed a secret that was never supposed to be told, certainly not on national television in front of family members who did not know. She tried to backtrack, her voice shaking. I was just giving an answer to the question. I was not talking about anything real. But the damage was catastrophically done. Nicole's father had turned to look at Michael and then at Nicole, his expression showing that he was piecing together the implications of Rachel's answer and realizing that this was not hypothetical but rather a description of actual events that had occurred within their family. Steve Harvey moved quickly to intervene and to minimize further harm. He addressed the Coleman family directly with compassion and authority. "Sir, ma'am," he gestured to Nicole's parents, "I need you to come with me off this stage right now. Production staff will take you to a private room where you can process what you just heard and where you can talk as a family without cameras and without an audience." He turned to Nicole, his expression showing genuine concern and sympathy for what she was experiencing. "Mom, I am so sorry. I am so sorry that your privacy was just violated in this way. We are going to provide you with support and resources, and this footage will not be aired." What just happened was not entertainment. It was a family crisis that should never have been exposed publicly. Steve addressed Rachel and Michael, his tone firm and disapproving. "What the two of you did was a betrayal of this woman and of this family." But what just happened here, confessing that betrayal on national television without considering the harm it would cause, that was another betrayal. You both need to think seriously about the consequences of your actions and about how to take responsibility for the damage you have caused. He turned to address the studio audience, many of whom sat in shocked silence at having witnessed such a painful family moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we just saw was not appropriate for this show or for public viewing. This was a family dealing with infidelity and betrayal, and those are issues that need to be handled privately with compassion and professional support. We are going to respect this family's privacy by not broadcasting what just occurred." The production team moved efficiently to escort the Coleman family members off the stage and into separate private areas where they could begin to process what had happened. Nicole was taken to one room with a counselor, completely devastated that the secret she had worked so hard to keep had been exposed in such a public and humiliating way. Her parents were taken to another room where they could begin to understand what they had just learned about their daughters and their son-in-law. Michael and Rachel were separated and taken to different locations, both facing the consequences of their affair being revealed in the worst possible circumstances. The immediate aftermath was chaotic and painful for everyone involved. Nicole met with a counselor who helped her process the shock and the violation of having her privacy destroyed on national television. The counselor validated Nicole's feelings of betrayal not just by the original affair, but by Rachel's careless revelation that had forced disclosure in such a harmful way. They discussed the reality that Nicole would now have to navigate conversations with her parents and extended family about the affair, conversations she had been avoiding for 18 months, but that could no longer be postponed. Nicole's parents met with a different counselor who helped them begin to understand what they had learned. They were devastated to discover that their younger daughter had engaged in an affair with their older daughter's husband, shocked that Nicole had kept this secret from them for so long, and struggling with complex emotions about both daughters and their son-in-law. The counselor helped them process their initial reactions and encouraged them to approach the upcoming family conversations with the goal of healing rather than blame, even though blame and anger were natural immediate responses. Michael and Rachel each met separately with counselors who confronted them about their choices and the harm they had caused. Rachel in particular was forced to confront the reality that her moment of careless speech on the Family Feud stage had caused additional trauma beyond the original affair. She had exposed a secret that was not solely hers to reveal. She had done so in the most public way possible, and she had hurt her sister and her parents through her lack of consideration and judgment. The counselor challenged her to think about why she had given such a specific and revealing answer and whether on some level she had wanted to be released from the burden of keeping the secret, even though doing so caused enormous harm. In the days and weeks that followed the Family Feud incident, The Coleman family engaged in extremely difficult conversations about what had happened. Nicole had to explain to her parents why she had kept the affair secret for 18 months, walking them through her reasoning and her fears about causing additional pain through disclosure. Her parents expressed hurt that she had not trusted them with the truth and frustration that they had been interacting normally with Rachel and Michael without knowing what had occurred. However, they also expressed understanding of Nicole's difficult position and validated that there had been no easy choices in how to handle such a devastating betrayal. The family had to confront what the revelation meant for their relationships going forward. Nicole's parents were furious with Rachel for the affair and for the public revelation, and they made clear that Rachel would need to demonstrate genuine accountability and changed behavior before they would be willing to fully restore their relationship with her. They were disappointed in Michael, but recognized that Nicole's marriage was her decision to navigate. They committed to supporting Nicole regardless of whether she chose to stay with Michael or to divorce him, and they assured her that they would be present for their grandchildren no matter what happened between their parents. Nicole herself had to make decisions about her marriage in the aftermath of the public revelation. The exposure of the secret had paradoxically brought some relief from the burden of maintaining the facade, but it had also brought new challenges in the form of explaining to extended family members and dealing with the knowledge that others now knew about the betrayal she had experienced. She continued marriage counseling with Michael, but she also recognized that the foundation of their relationship had been so damaged that repair might not be possible. After several months of intensive therapy and soul-searching, Nicole made the decision to divorce Michael. She realized that while he had shown remorse and had made efforts to rebuild trust, she could not move past the betrayal of the affair with her sister. The public revelation on Family Feud had been a turning point that made clear she could not continue living with secrets and pretense. She wanted to build a life based on honesty and integrity, and that required ending a marriage that had been fundamentally compromised by betrayal. The divorce proceedings were complicated, but ultimately resolved with an agreement that prioritized the well-being of their children. Michael maintained regular contact with Emma and Jacob, and he and Nicole worked to co-parent effectively despite their personal conflicts. Nicole focused on creating a stable home environment for her children and on her own healing through continued therapy and support from family and friends who now knew the full truth of what she had experienced. Nicole's relationship with her sister Rachel remained fractured and might never fully heal. Rachel had sent numerous apologies for both the affair and for the public revelation, expressing remorse for the multiple layers of harm she had caused. Nicole had acknowledged these apologies but had made clear that forgiveness would be a long process if it happened at all. She needed significant time and space away from Rachel to heal from the betrayal, and she was not willing to force a reconciliation simply because they were sisters if doing so compromised her own emotional well-being. 6 months after that July day, Nicole agreed to participate in a conversation on Steve Harvey's talk show about the experience and about the broader issues of family affairs, secrets, and the devastating impact of having private betrayals exposed publicly. She appeared alone, having made the decision that neither Michael nor Rachel deserved the platform or the opportunity to tell their side of the story in that context. When Steve asked Nicole to describe what it had been like to have the affair revealed on Family Feud, after keeping it secret for so long, Nicole's response reflected the complexity of her experience. She explained that hearing Rachel confess the affair on stage had been initially devastating, a moment of profound violation and humiliation as her carefully guarded secret was exposed to her parents and to millions of viewers. However, she also acknowledged that in the months since, she had come to recognize that keeping the secret had been slowly destroying her mental health and her relationships, and that the forced disclosure had ultimately freed her from a burden that was unsustainable. She was clear that she wished the revelation had happened differently in a private family conversation rather than on national television, but she also recognized that she might never have found the courage to disclose voluntarily. Steve asked Nicole what she would want others to know about keeping secrets related to family affairs and betrayal. Nicole spoke directly about the impossibility of maintaining normalcy when carrying knowledge of such fundamental betrayal. She explained that every family gathering where she had to pretend everything was fine had been torture, that every interaction with Rachel and Michael while her parents remained ignorant had chipped away at her sense of self. She encouraged others in similar situations to tell the truth to trusted family members or friends rather than suffering in isolation, even though disclosure was frightening and came with consequences. She emphasized that the costs of keeping such secrets typically outweighed the costs of revealing them. Nicole also addressed the specific harm of having the affair exposed on television. She acknowledged that while the secret keeping had been damaging to her, the public revelation had created additional trauma and had violated her right to control how and when sensitive information about her life was shared. She was critical of Rachel's carelessness in giving such a specific answer without considering the consequences, viewing it as yet another example of Rachel prioritizing her own needs and comfort over Nicole's well-being. The expert guests on the show, including a family therapist and a specialist in infidelity and betrayal trauma, provided additional context about the dynamics Nicole had experienced. The family therapist discussed the common pattern of affair victims keeping the betrayal secret to protect children, preserve family relationships, or maintain appearances, and explained why this typically backfired by creating additional psychological harm. She emphasized that while disclosure was difficult, it was generally necessary for healing and for restoring authentic relationships. The infidelity specialist addressed the particular betrayal of affairs involving family members, explaining that these caused compounded trauma because they violated both the marital bond and the family bond simultaneously. She discussed the importance of the betrayed partner having support and validation rather than being pressured to forgive quickly or to maintain relationships with people who had harmed them profoundly. The response to Nicole's appearance was overwhelmingly supportive. Thousands of viewers reached out to express admiration for her courage in sharing her story and to offer validation of her experiences. Many shared their own stories of family betrayals and the difficult decisions about whether and how to disclose such information to others. People who had been in similar positions of keeping painful secrets expressed gratitude that someone was speaking openly about the psychological cost of silence and the complexity of navigating family relationships after fundamental betrayals. Some viewers had critical responses, suggesting that Nicole should have told her parents immediately about the affair rather than keeping it secret for so long, or arguing that she should have worked harder to forgive Rachel and maintain the sisterly relationship. Nicole addressed these criticisms directly in the show and in follow-up interviews, explaining that every person's situation was unique and that there were no simple right answers to how to handle such complex betrayals. She maintained that her choices had been reasonable given her circumstances, even if in retrospect she might have made different decisions, and she rejected the idea that she owed either Michael or Rachel forgiveness if that forgiveness was not authentic and freely given. 1 year after that July day, Nicole had rebuilt her life in ways that reflected her values and her needs. She had finalized her divorce from Michael and had established a co-parenting relationship that protected her children while maintaining appropriate boundaries with her ex-husband. She had limited contact with Rachel, primarily seeing her at large family gatherings where interaction was unavoidable, but she had been clear with her parents that she was not interested in pretending to have a close sisterly relationship when the trust had been so fundamentally broken. Nicole had also become involved in support work for people dealing with infidelity and betrayal, facilitating online groups where people could share their experiences and receive validation and encouragement from others who understood what they were going through. She found meaning in using her painful experience to help others navigate similar situations, and she developed expertise in the particular challenges of family affairs and the complex decisions about disclosure and relationship boundaries that these situations created. Steve Harvey reflected occasionally on that July day in his later work and interviews. He described it as one of the most disturbing moments in his hosting career, witnessing a family secret being explosively revealed through a careless answer that caused immediate and visible harm to an innocent person. He talked about the immediate decision to stop the taping and to refuse to air the footage, recognizing that some moments were too private and too painful to be treated as entertainment regardless of the dramatic value they might have. He emphasized that protecting Nicole from further harm had been more important than any content the show might have gained from the incident. The legacy of that day at Family Feud extended into broader conversations about family affairs, the costs of keeping secrets about betrayal, the additional trauma of having private matters exposed publicly, and the responsibility of individuals to consider the consequences of their words before speaking. The story served as a cautionary tale about the harm caused by affairs involving family members and about the ways that careless disclosure could create additional trauma beyond the original betrayal. It also sparked discussions about the ethics of reality television and game shows in handling moments when participants inadvertently or deliberately revealed deeply personal and damaging information. Before we conclude this difficult but important story, if you believe that family betrayals deserve to be handled with wisdom and discretion rather than public exposure, and that protecting people from unnecessary humiliation is more important than dramatic content, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We share stories that challenge us to think about privacy, dignity, and the responsibility we have to handle sensitive family matters with appropriate care and consideration. Years after that July day, Nicole continued to reflect on the experience of having the affair revealed on Family Feud and on the journey of healing that had followed. She acknowledged that while the public nature of the disclosure had been traumatic and humiliating, it had also been a catalyst that forced her to stop living with secrets and to start building a life based on honesty and authenticity. She recognized that she might have continued keeping the secret indefinitely if Rachel had not accidentally revealed it, and that prolonged secret keeping would have continued damaging her mental health and her relationships. The story of what happened when Steve Harvey stopped the show after a contestant revealed a family affair became a powerful reminder about the devastating impact of family betrayals, the impossible burden of keeping such secrets, the additional harm caused by public disclosure of private matters, and the importance of handling sensitive family situations with wisdom and discretion. It demonstrated that affairs involving family members created compounded trauma and complex decisions about relationships and disclosure that had no easy answers. Nicole's journey from secret keeping wife protecting her family from painful knowledge to divorced mother rebuilding her life based on truth and integrity served as both a warning about the costs of family betrayals and a testament to the possibility of healing even after profound harm. Her message remained consistent over the years, which was that people dealing with family affairs deserved support and the freedom to make their own decisions about disclosure and relationships without pressure or judgment, that keeping such secrets typically caused more harm than revealing them even though disclosure was frightening and came with consequences, that betrayers needed to take full accountability for their actions rather than expecting quick forgiveness or minimizing the harm they had caused, and that sometimes the healthiest choice was to create distance from family members who had betrayed trust rather than forcing reconciliation for the sake of maintaining family relationships. That is the true story of what happened when a Family Feud contestant accidentally revealed a family affair through a careless answer, forcing Steve Harvey to immediately stop the show to protect an innocent woman from further public humiliation, and demonstrating that some family matters are too private and too painful to be exposed on television, reminding us all that discretion and wisdom are essential when handling sensitive family situations, and that protecting people from unnecessary harm must take precedence over dramatic content or entertainment value.